There is a world woven into the one you know, a world you walk through every day without ever truly seeing it. It lies just beneath the surface of ordinary vision, quiet, delicate, hidden in wavelengths your eyes were never designed to detect. Yet animals all around you perceive it effortlessly. In forests, in oceans, in the skies above, and even in the smallest corners of your home, countless creatures navigate realities built from colors you cannot imagine, patterns you cannot decode, and signals you cannot sense. Their world is not darker than ours. It is simply deeper. If your eyes could shift, even for a moment, into the spectrum that animals occupy, you would witness a universe transformed. Flowers would blaze with ultraviolet pathways, maps painted specifically for bees. Birds would shimmer with patterns invisible to humans, each feather carrying messages only other birds can read. Mantis shrimps would reveal the hidden architecture of polarized light, detecting shifts so subtle they border on the impossible. And deep in the ocean, creatures sculpt entire languages from glowing signals, communicating in pulses, flashes, and silent rivers of blue-green light. What appears to us as emptiness becomes a conversation. What looks still becomes alive. Your world, your familiar, human world, is just one narrow slice of the electromagnetic spectrum, a thin window, a fragile keyhole view into something far more complex. But for other species, that spectrum opens wide. Their eyes, their senses, their instincts, all tuned to layers of reality that flow silently around you every moment. To them, the invisible is obvious. To them, the unseen is home. Tonight, we will step through that keyhole. Gently, slowly, we will drift into the wavelengths hidden from human sight. We will follow the ultraviolet trails that guide insects across vast distances, slip into the polarized patterns that fish use to communicate, and descend into the bioluminescent kingdoms where light is shaped like language. And as you listen, the borders of your familiar world will soften. Colors you have never known will unfold in your imagination. Shapes and signals will take on new meaning. The invisible will begin to glow. Let your eyes rest. Let your mind open. A different world is waiting, one that has always been here, all around you, shimmering just beyond the reach of human perception. Welcome to the invisible world. The human eye, remarkable as it is, sees only a thin sliver of the universe, an impossibly narrow band of wavelengths known as the visible spectrum. Everything you call color, every shade you have ever known, fits into this fragile window between roughly 400 and 700 nanometers. To us, that seems complete. It feels like the world. But in reality, it is merely a whisper in a vast ocean of unseen light. Just beyond the edges of your perception lie ultraviolet rays, infrared warmth, polarized patterns, electromagnetic signatures, all flowing around you in silence. And while humans remain blind to these hidden layers, countless animals navigate them with ease, shaping entire lifetimes upon information we never even register. Imagine walking through a forest. To your eyes, the leaves appear green, the bark a muted brown, the light filtering softly between branches. But to a bee, that same forest is ablaze with ultraviolet signals. Flowers reveal intricate glowing patterns designed specifically to guide pollinators toward nectar. These patterns are invisible to you, not because they do not exist, but because your eyes lack the receptors to interpret them. Bees see landing strips, arrows, concentric rings, and ultraviolet halos that mark food sources with astonishing clarity. What appears to you as a simple yellow petal becomes, to them, a luminous portal. Their world is not more colorful, it is more informative. High above the trees, birds perceive yet another dimension hidden from your sight. Many species can detect ultraviolet reflections in feathers, signals that reveal health, strength, age, and even emotional states. A bird in flight reads these patterns like a living map of social information. To humans, two birds may appear identical. To each other, they shine with distinct ultraviolet signatures, creating a language of color invisible to us. The sky, too, is encoded with polarized light, forming directional cues that birds use for navigation during migrations that span continents. These patterns shift subtly with the angle of the sun, painting the sky with directional grids we can't see, but to birds, they are as clear and reliable as a compass. Meanwhile, under the surface of the ocean, a different form of invisible communication unfolds. Many marine animals, fish, crustaceans, cephalopods perceive polarized light with astonishing precision. Polarization reveals shapes, textures, and movements that would otherwise vanish into the shimmering underwater glare. A predator might be perfectly camouflaged to human eyes, its outline blurred into shifting blue light. But to an animal with polarization vision, its edges become crisp, unmistakable. Mantis shrimps, for example, see polarized patterns so complex they make our vision seem primitive. They detect subtle differences in light angles that reveal hidden threats, potential mates, and even internal structures beneath the shells of other animals. Their world is not brighter, it is more detailed, more layered, more alive. And then there is the deep ocean, where sunlight fades into darkness and life creates its own illumination. Here, bioluminescent organisms shape entire ecosystems out of invisible wavelengths. Flashing communication signals, glowing hunting lures, shimmering camouflage, these displays exist primarily in blue and green frequencies, designed for eyes that evolved to see in near-total darkness. Many deep-sea creatures can detect these faint glows with incredible sensitivity, reading the ocean's invisible language as easily as humans read printed text. Where we see a void, they see landscapes of light. Where we see emptiness, they see movement, signals, boundaries, opportunities. And so, as we begin this journey into the invisible world, one truth becomes clear. The human experience of reality is only one version of the world, not the complete version, not even the dominant one. Just a narrow slice adapted to our survival. Beyond that slice lies a universe of signals, colors, and patterns, each one essential to the lives of the animals who perceive them. As you drift deeper into these hidden wavelengths, the familiar world will begin to dissolve, replaced by something more intricate, more dynamic, and far more mysterious. For now, simply allow the idea to settle. Reality is larger than we can see, and countless creatures around us are already living inside its deeper layers. To understand how animals access parts of reality that remain hidden to us, we must first step into the quiet machinery of vision itself, the delicate structures inside the eye that translate light into meaning. The human eye contains 3 types of cone cells, each tuned to a specific band of wavelengths. These cones allow us to perceive the familiar rainbow of reds, greens, and blues. But the number of cones an animal possesses and the wavelengths those cones detect dramatically shape the world it experiences. Some creatures have only 2 cones, seeing a muted, simplified world compared to ours. Others have 4 or even 5, granting them access to dimensions of color that defy human imagination. Vision, in its essence, is not merely about seeing. It is about what the brain is capable of understanding from the light available to it. Birds, for example, are equipped with 4 cone types, allowing them to detect ultraviolet light alongside our visible spectrum. This additional cone opens an entire hidden dimension, a richer, more complex world layered atop the one we know. What seems uniformly colored to our eyes often contains hidden signals birds can instantly interpret. Fruits reveal ultraviolet patterns that indicate ripeness. Feathers blaze with ultraviolet markers that reveal age, health, and dominance. Even the smallest insects leave behind faint UV footprints on petals after visiting them. Birds perceive all of this effortlessly, moving through a world filled with glowing cues that guide their choices and shape their interactions. Their perception is not a magical ability, it is simply an expanded biological language. Insects push this expansion even further. Bees, butterflies, and dragonflies see the world through compound eyes composed of thousands of small lenses. Each lens captures a slightly different angle of light, combining into a mosaic-like image that reveals movement with extraordinary precision. But it's the ultraviolet patterns these insects detect that truly reshape their world. Flowers are not passive decorations, they are active communicators. Many species have evolved ultraviolet nectar guides, luminous patterns invisible to humans but perfectly visible to insects. These patterns act like illuminated runways, directing pollinators precisely where they need to land. To a bee, a flower is not simply colorful, it is a glowing signpost, a map, a message carved in ultraviolet brilliance. Nature hides nothing from them. Instead, it speaks to them in wavelengths built specifically for their eyes. Meanwhile, in the ocean's shimmering corridors, fish navigate using visual abilities sculpted by water's unique optical properties. Water absorbs certain wavelengths and scatters others, creating a distorted environment where human-style vision becomes ineffective. Many fish evolved receptors for polarized light, an ability that allows them to see through reflective glare and detect movements invisible to the human eye. Some species, like anchovies and sardines, use polarization to coordinate their schooling behavior. From above, a shimmering school of fish appears chaotic, a blur of silver bodies shifting unpredictably. But from within that school, polarized light creates a communication system, a silent choreography that lets thousands of individuals move as one organism. Their world is structured by light angles, reflections, and flashes too subtle for human vision to decode. And then there are the masters of invisible perception, the mantis shrimps. Their eyes are among the most complex ever discovered. With up to 16 types of photoreceptors, they can see ultraviolet, polarized light, and even circular polarization, something no human eye can detect at all. To a mantis shrimp, the underwater world is layered with patterns and signals invisible to every other creature, a hidden architecture of wavelengths that reveal predators, prey, mates, and camouflage. They perceive contrasts we cannot imagine, detect shifts invisible to our brightest instruments, and navigate an ocean of information where humans would perceive only murky blue. Their vision is not merely superior, it is alien. All of these creatures remind us of a profound truth. The visible world is not the world. It is only the version filtered through the limits of our biology. Other animals are not seeing more, they are seeing differently, perceiving wavelengths that our eyes are physically incapable of processing. In their perception lie realities that overlap ours but remain inaccessible, layered, veiled, hidden. And as we continue exploring the invisible world, we begin to feel those layers stirring around us, a quiet suggestion that reality is larger, richer, and far more intricate than human senses alone can grasp. The invisible world of animals begins at the level of photons themselves, the smallest packets of light that carry information across the universe. To humans, a photon is perceived only if it falls within the narrow energy band our cone cells can absorb. But the photoreceptors of other species are tuned differently. Their molecular pigments respond to wavelengths that glide silently past human eyes. Each pigment contains a specific arrangement of amino acids that determines the exact energy required to activate it. In ultraviolet sensitive animals, these pigments possess structural variations that allow them to absorb higher energy photons wavelengths so short they would pass through our retinas without triggering any neural response. In effect, their eyes are sampling a wider portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, translating raw physical signals into biological meaning. The neural circuitry behind this process is equally remarkable. In humans, signals from the three cone types converge early in the visual pathway, forming broad categories of color. But in species with tetrachromatic or pentachromatic vision, birds, reptiles, certain insects, the brain keeps these channels more distinct, preserving finer gradients of spectral information. This allows them to discriminate colors humans cannot imagine, distinguishing between two ultraviolet wavelengths that would appear identical to us. Their visual cortex is wired to interpret differences not just in hue, but in polarization angle, reflectance spectra, and photon scattering patterns. In these brains, color is not merely a sensation, it is a data stream, a high-resolution map of environmental detail. In the underwater world, physics alters the very nature of light. Water absorbs long wavelengths. First reds and oranges disappear within the first few meters, followed by yellows and greens. What remains near the ocean depths is primarily blue light, in monochromatic bands that drastically reshape visual evolution. Many marine species adapt by evolving specialized rhodopsins, light-sensitive proteins, tuned to these surviving wavelengths. Others bypass color entirely and shift toward polarization sensitivity. Polarized light, unlike color, carries directional information. The orientation of its waves reveals scattering angles, surface textures, and even the electric fields around certain organisms. Fish like anchovies possess double cones, paired photoreceptors that compare polarization angles in real time, giving them the ability to decode a hidden geometry in the water around them. Some animals go a step further, manipulating light directly. Cephalopods, octopuses, squids, cuttlefish use chromatophores, iridophores, and leucophores to actively modulate how their skin interacts with incoming photons. Each layer reflects or absorbs specific wavelengths, creating dynamic patterns visible only to species tuned to the same optical channels. Humans see these displays as sudden flashes of iridescence, but to other cephalopods, they are structured signals, bits of optical communication encoded in polarized reflections. Recent studies suggest their skin contains opsins similar to those found in their eyes, possibly granting them distributed photoreception, a body-wide ability to sense and respond to light Even without central processing, their perception is not confined to vision, it is integrated into their very surface. Meanwhile, in the insect world, compound eyes operate under fundamentally different constraints. Each ommatidium functions as a separate photonic sampling unit, capturing light from a narrow angle. The brain stitches these signals into a mosaic representation of reality. But insects also possess microvilli structures within their photoreceptors that act as biological polarization filters. These filters align in precise orientations, enabling bees, ants, and dragonflies to detect the polarization patterns of sunlight scattered through the atmosphere. These patterns shift predictably according to the sun's azimuth, forming a celestial compass even on cloudy days when the sun is invisible. For them, navigation is not a matter of sight in the human sense. It is a perceptual computation built on the physics of Rayleigh scattering and polarization gradients. And beneath all of these mechanisms lies a deeper principle. Sensory evolution is shaped not by what the world is, but by which aspects of the world are useful for survival. Animals do not see more or less than humans, they see what their environment requires. A bee perceives ultraviolet because flowers evolved signals within that spectrum. A bird sees polarization because the sky carries navigational information encoded in it. A mantis shrimp detects circular polarization because marine organisms reflect it in ways that reveal hidden layers of identity. Vision, in every species, is a negotiation with physics, a selective agreement between biology and the electromagnetic structure of the world. And the result is a mosaic of realities, each coherent, each functional, yet each fundamentally different from our own. To enter the invisible world of animals more deeply, we must examine not just the structure of their eyes, but the physics of how light interacts with matter. Every surface, every feather, scale, leaf, shell modifies light in ways that carry hidden information. When photons strike a structure, they can be absorbed, reflected, refracted, scattered, or transformed into new wavelengths. These interactions encode details about texture, material composition, moisture levels, and biological state. Human eyes decode only a fraction of these interactions. But for animals with specialized photoreceptors, the world becomes a layered cascade of optical signals. A butterfly's wing, for instance, is not simply colorful. It is a nanostructured grid of ridges and microtubules that manipulate light through interference, diffraction, and iridescence, physical processes visible only to animals tuned to the correct wavelengths. Feathers work the same way. Birds do not rely solely on pigment for color. Many species create structural color tones produced not by chemical molecules, but by microscopic arrangements of keratin and air pockets. These structures reflect ultraviolet light in patterns humans cannot perceive. To a starling or a pigeon, another bird's plumage is not merely glossy, it contains ultraviolet signatures that indicate immune strength, genetic quality, and reproductive fitness. In this sense, ultraviolet vision becomes part of a species' social architecture. Entire mating systems depend on signals human eyes are blind to. What appears to us as a simple brown or blue feather may shine with a hidden geometry of ultraviolet bars, gradients, and patterns, carrying information essential for the species' survival. Even the ocean, seemingly uniform in its blue depths, contains layers of invisible structure. As sunlight penetrates the water column, Wavelengths separate according to energy. High-energy blue light travels deepest, while red disappears almost instantly. Animals evolved to exploit these gradients. Deep-sea fish possess photophores, biological light-emitting organs tuned precisely to the wavelengths that travel farthest through water. Their bodies glow with signals that match these narrow bands, creating communication channels invisible to predators lacking the appropriate receptors. Some species emit light in wavelengths that no known predator can detect, creating optical private messaging systems. Others amplify faint bioluminescence using reflective tissues like tapetum lucidum, increasing their sensitivity to photons thousands of times beyond human capability. In the deep sea, invisibility is not the absence of light, it is the mastery of controlling whether light is seen. Polarization vision extends this mastery even further. When light reflects off a surface water, wing, shell, it becomes partially polarized, aligning the orientation of its waves. Humans cannot detect this orientation, but many animals can. Dragonflies, for example, use polarization to locate water from great distances, since water reflects horizontally polarized light. But some insects take this further. They encode polarization directly into their bodies. The jewel beetle's iridescent exoskeleton produces polarized reflections that function as recognition signals. Mantis shrimps detect circular polarization, a rare optical phenomenon in which light spirals as it travels. Circular polarization reveals biological materials that linear polarization cannot, such as the structural proteins in certain marine organisms. To a mantis shrimp, the ocean is filled with polarized contour lines, hidden borders, signatures, and communication symbols invisible to every other creature, including humans. Meanwhile, in the realm of infrared, snakes and some mammals perceive heat as a form of light. Their specialized pit organs detect thermal emissions, photons in the infrared range that radiate from living bodies. These organs function like biological bolometers, measuring temperature differences as small as a fraction of a degree. When a snake scans its surroundings, it constructs a thermal map layered atop its visual map, allowing it to see warm prey even in total darkness. These infrared sensitive cells convert heat energy photons into neural impulses, bypassing traditional vision entirely. In essence, such animals have evolved a parallel form of sight, one that does not depend on reflected light, but on emitted radiation. Where human eyes see only night, snakes see glowing silhouettes and shifting gradients of warmth. Each of these mechanisms illustrates a profound scientific truth. Perception is an emergent property, shaped not only by biology, but by the physics of the environment. Animals evolve senses that capture the portions of reality most relevant to their survival, creating species-specific windows into the electromagnetic spectrum. Some windows are wider, some narrower, but none encompass the full complexity of light. The invisible world is not one world, it is many worlds, layered on top of one another, overlapping, interacting, yet experienced through entirely different perceptual frameworks. And as we drift deeper into these hidden wavelengths, the familiar landscape dissolves. Reality becomes a spectrum, not a solid, a process, not a picture. A living field of photons, each carrying information waiting to be decoded by the creatures built to perceive it. To perceive the invisible world, an animal must do more than capture unusual wavelengths of light. it must also interpret them. Vision is not simply the act of receiving photons. It is a complex negotiation between the eye and the brain, where raw electromagnetic data is transformed into coherent perception. In humans, this negotiation occurs mostly within the visual cortex, where neurons assemble edges, colors, depths, and motion into an organized picture. But in many animals, the neural architecture responsible for visual processing is radically different, adapted to extract meaning from wavelengths and patterns humans cannot access. The mantis shrimp's brain, for instance, processes color information within the eye itself, reducing the computational burden on the brain and allowing faster responses, an evolutionary advantage in the chaotic, light-sculpted environment of coral reefs. In birds, visual processing is intertwined with their ability to navigate across vast distances. Their brains contain clusters of neurons sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field. These neurons rely on a quantum process known as radical pair mechanisms, a reaction in which pairs of electrons become entangled and their spin states are influenced by magnetic fields. The result is extraordinary. Birds literally see magnetic field lines as faint visual patterns overlaid upon their ultraviolet-rich perception of the world. While humans rely on maps and instruments, migratory birds travel thousands of kilometers, guided by a sensory experience that merges photochemistry with quantum physics. The invisible becomes visible not through additional eyes, but through molecular reactions unfolding within their retinas. Other species expand their perceptual world through temporal sensitivity, the speed at which visual information is processed. Humans experience visual flicker at about 60 Hz, smoothing motion into continuous flow. But many insects, such as flies and dragonflies, process visual information at 200–300 Hz, perceiving events in slow motion. A single human gesture becomes, to them, a drawn-out sequence of frames, each rich with detail. This high temporal resolution allows them to detect movements invisible to humans, tiny shifts in shadow, subtle flickers of polarized light, minute vibrations in the air. Their perception operates not only across different wavelengths, but across different speeds of time. The invisible world is not just about what is unseen, it is about what is too fast for humans to detect. Then there are animals that integrate multiple sensory inputs into unified perceptual systems. Electric fish, for example, generate electric fields around their bodies and detect distortions in these fields caused by nearby objects. Their electrosensory organs function similarly to vision. They form images of their surroundings based on electrical gradients rather than light. In murky rivers where visibility is limited, this electric vision reveals shapes, textures, and movements hidden from optical eyes. Sharks possess ampullae of Lorenzini gel-filled canals, sensitive to the faint electric signals produced by muscle contractions. These organs act as biological electromagnetic detectors, allowing sharks to locate prey even when buried under sand. Their perception extends beyond vision entirely, into a realm where light becomes unnecessary. Infrared sensing snakes add yet another layer of complexity. Their pit organs contain membranes packed with ion channels that change their electrical state when warmed by infrared radiation. This process, known as thermotransduction, allows snakes to convert thermal gradients into neural signals with remarkable precision. When combined with their conventional eyesight, the result is a dual vision system, one optical, one thermal. Snakes perceive the world as a composite of reflected and emitted light, a fusion of two realities. Their prey glows not with luminosity but with heat, creating thermal silhouettes that persist even in absolute darkness. For them, the invisible is simply another dimension of space. Taken together, these sensory systems reveal a striking truth. Each species inhabits a custom-built perceptual universe shaped by its ecological needs. Where humans experience a narrow band of electromagnetic wavelengths, animals stretch into ultraviolet, infrared, polarization, bioluminescence, magnetoreception, and electrical fields. Their realities overlap ours but extend far beyond it, forming parallel layers of perception woven together by evolution. The invisible world is not a hidden realm waiting to be discovered. It is an ever-present dimension of reality, visible to those equipped with the biological instruments to perceive it. To fully understand how animals perceive the invisible world, we must descend into the molecular origins of sight itself, the moment when a single photon meets a biological molecule and changes its shape. This interaction lies at the heart of vision across nearly all species. The molecule responsible is opsin, a protein bound to a light-sensitive chromophore, usually retinal. When a photon strikes retinal, it triggers a conformational change, from cis to trans, a shift lasting femtoseconds. This microscopic event initiates a cascade of biochemical reactions, amplifying a single photon into an electrical signal the brain can interpret. But different species express different opsin variants, each tuned to distinct wavelengths. Birds express ultraviolet-sensitive opsins. Fish living in murky water express opsins tuned to longer wavelengths. Deep-sea species adjust their pigments to capture the faintest glimmers of bioluminescence. Vision, at its core, is a molecular dialogue between light and biology. Yet detecting light is only the first step. The complexity lies in what the brain does with the information. In humans, the visual cortex constructs images through hierarchical processing, edges first, then shapes, then colors, then meaning. But in many animals, the process is radically reorganized. Bees, for example, possess neural circuits that treat ultraviolet patterns as structural information rather than color. They overlay these UV signals onto spatial memory maps of their environment, integrating optical cues with olfactory landmarks and gravitational orientation. Birds, on the other hand, fuse ultraviolet vision with magnetoreception, creating a dual-coded map of the world that incorporates both light and geomagnetic data. Their perception is not segmented into senses, it is synthesized into a multispectral experience that blurs the boundaries humans place between sight, navigation, and instinct. Marine animals process visual information in a radically different way, shaped by the distortions of water. As light penetrates the ocean, its spectral composition changes dramatically, causing many species to evolve opsins optimized for blue-green wavelengths. But some deep-sea creatures take this further, using their photoreceptors to detect bioluminescent signals encoded in specific temporal patterns. Flash frequency, decay rate, wavelength, pulse intervals, these parameters convey information humans cannot perceive. A small, unassuming fish may see a bioluminescent flicker as an entire sentence. A squid may interpret the shimmering pattern on another's skin as an emotional state, where human eyes register only darkness. Their eyes decode entire languages, built from photons born inside living bodies. Even more astonishing are the animals that exploit the quantum nature of light itself. Migratory birds depend on cryptochrome proteins in their retinas, which respond to light by forming radical pairs, electron pairs whose spin states remain quantumly entangled. These spin states are influenced by the Earth's magnetic field, producing faint visual patterns that overlay the bird's field of view. To them, the magnetic field is not a concept, it is a visible structure woven directly into their perceptual world. Some researchers propose that this visual magnetoreception may appear as gradients of brightness, subtle contours, or shifting dark light patterns. In this sense, birds are detectors of quantum states, converting subatomic spin interactions into macroscopic perception. Meanwhile, animals like snakes and vampire bats perceive infrared radiation not through photoreception, but through specialized ion channels that detect heat as a physical stimulus. These TRPA1 channels respond to temperature shifts with such sensitivity that a snake can form a thermal image of prey even in complete darkness. Their brains merge thermal and optical signals into a unified perceptual field, a fusion that produces a reality fundamentally different from human sight. For them, bodies are luminous beings, glowing softly with heat signatures that fluctuate with movement, stress, or emotional state. The invisible becomes an ever-present halo. Taken together, these systems reveal that the invisible world is not defined by what humans cannot see. It is defined by the enormous range of biological solutions evolution has created to sample the environment. Every species is shaped by ecological pressures that sculpt its sensory organs into devices optimized for survival, communication, and navigation. Some animals expand into ultraviolet realms, others descend into infrared darkness, still others decode polarization, magnetism, or electric fields. Reality is not uniform, it is sculpted by perception. And each animal lives inside its own version, a unique interpretation of the same physical world, built from the biological tools evolution has given it. When we examine how animals perceive the invisible world, one of the most striking revelations is that vision across species is not merely a passive recording of external light, it's an active computational process. The eye does not simply see. It pre-processes information, filters noise, enhances contrast, and extracts critical features before signals ever reach the brain. In humans, this pre-processing includes lateral inhibition, edge detection via retinal ganglion cells, and temporal smoothing to stabilize motion. But in many animals, this pre-processing is profoundly different. Insects, for example, possess specialized neural circuits that emphasize motion over detail, allowing them to detect rapid movement invisible to humans. Their brains prioritize dynamic information, creating a perception tuned for survival in a world where milliseconds mean life or death. Vision, in this sense, becomes a real-time algorithm sculpted by evolution. In birds, especially raptors, retinal specialization reaches extraordinary levels. Their retinas contain deep foveae pit-like structures that act as biological telescopes, concentrating light and magnifying distant details. But what truly separates avian vision from human vision is not acuity, but spectral discrimination. Their cones contain oil droplets acting as intracellular filters, refining incoming wavelengths with extraordinary precision. These droplets remove spectral overlap, creating cleaner, sharper color channels. The result is a perceptual world where ultraviolet patterns, atmospheric scattering gradients, and subtle color shifts form a precise informational landscape. Where humans see a simple blue sky, a bird may perceive gradients revealing wind direction, humidity, and the position of celestial bodies. Their sensory world is layered with invisible structure. Marine animals face an entirely different computational challenge. Light doesn't behave normally underwater. Scattering, absorption, and refraction distort visual input, generating noise. Many fish solve this problem by evolving retinas with dense photoreceptor arrays arranged in specialized zones. Some species possess areae centrales, regions of ultra-high receptor density used for targeting prey, while others develop horizontal streaks that allow panoramic scanning of ocean horizons. But the most sophisticated adaptations appear in cephalopods, whose brains integrate chromatic aberrations, focusing errors caused by different wavelengths, bending differently to detect color, despite being functionally colorblind. They use the physics of light itself, analyzing how different wavelengths blur at different depths, extracting color information without color receptors. It is a form of vision built not from biological pigments but from optical computation. At the microscopic level, perception becomes even more astonishing. Many insects and crustaceans possess rhabdomeric photoreceptors, whose microvilli are arranged in exact geometries to optimize polarization sensitivity. These microvilli act as natural waveguides, aligning photons by polarization angle before transducing them into electrical signals. In some species, neighboring photoreceptors are oriented at 90 degrees to one another, allowing direct comparison of polarization states, a biological analog to optical spectrometers. For humans, polarized light is an abstract physical concept. For animals like bees, ants, and mantis shrimps, it is a perceptual axis as fundamental as color or brightness. To them, surfaces that appear uniform to human eyes explode into richly textured polarization landscapes, revealing water sources, hidden predators, or chemical traces left by other animals. On land, mammals have evolved their own forms of invisible perception. While most mammals lack ultraviolet vision, many species possess tappeta lucida reflective layers behind the retina that increase light sensitivity. But beyond improved night vision, these layers create interference patterns, subtly altering the spectral composition of incoming light. Cats, raccoons, and other nocturnal species use these patterns to detect motion in conditions too dark for human sight. Meanwhile, bats utilize an interplay of infrared sensitivity and rapid acoustic processing, creating a multisensory perception where auditory information forms spatial maps and thermal cues enrich those maps with biological relevance. Their perception is a synthesis of modalities, merging senses humans keep separate. When we consider all of these adaptations together, a profound scientific principle emerges. Each animal constructs its perceptual world by extracting the specific information most relevant to its ecological niche. Vision is not an objective representation of reality, it is a tailored interface. Humans evolved eyes optimized for daytime color recognition. Birds evolved systems tuned to ultraviolet, magnetic fields, and atmospheric polarization. Deep-sea creatures evolved photoreceptors for bioluminescent signals. Insects evolved compound eyes optimized for motion and UV-coded plant structures. Snakes evolved thermal detectors, and sharks evolved electromagnetic sensitivity. Each lineage carved out its own sensory version of the world, distinct, coherent, and often incompatible with ours. The invisible world, therefore, is not a single hidden dimension, but a tapestry of parallel sensory realities, each perceivable only through the lens evolution has crafted. To grasp the full depth of how animals perceive the invisible world, we must turn our attention to the neural code, the language by which sensory organs translate photons, heat, magnetism, or electrical fields into meaningful internal experience. In humans, this code relies heavily on rate coding. The frequency at which neurons fire conveys information. But many animals extend far beyond this. Birds, insects, cephalopods, and reptiles use temporal coding, where the precise timing of neural spikes carries as much information as the spikes themselves. A single millisecond shift in neural firing can encode the angle of polarized light or the magnetic inclination of the Earth. Thus, perception is not defined only by receptors. It is defined by the neural algorithms that interpret them. In effect, each species runs its own sensory operating system. This operating system is shaped by evolutionary pressures that sculpt neural architecture with extraordinary precision. Predators that hunt in low light, owls, foxes, felines, develop retinas dense with rod cells, maximizing photon capture. But beyond this structural adaptation lies a deeper rewrite. Their visual cortex filters noise, amplifies weak signals, and enhances contrast through lateral inhibition. These neural computations allow them to extract order from visual chaos, turning faint light gradients into usable spatial information. Meanwhile, prey animals often evolve panoramic fields of view, sacrificing depth perception for near 360 degrees visibility. Their brains merge inputs from offset visual fields into unified representations, while suppressing distortions that humans would find disorienting. Their brains evolve not simply to see, but to see what matters most. The world underwater requires an even more complex neural negotiation. Because water scatters light unpredictably, many fish evolved neural circuits capable of integrating incomplete visual cues. Instead of expecting a clear image, their brains interpret probability distributions of light, estimating shape, distance, and movement using partial data. This is Bayesian inference occurring biologically. The brain constantly updates predictions by comparing expected and observed photon patterns. In murky environments, this ability provides enormous adaptive advantage. A human placed in the same conditions would see only shifting darkness. A fish perceives meaningful structure, reconstructing reality from scattered fragments. Their perception is an active hypothesis engine tuned by millions of years of selective pressure. Some animals elevate this even further by merging multiple invisible channels into a single perceptual stream. The mantis shrimp's nervous system, for example, does not separate color vision, polarization, and motion detection into distinct pathways the way humans do. Instead, these signals converge early, forming a multidimensional sensory representation that encodes far more than any single channel. A reflected photon may carry information about color, angle, polarization, and texture simultaneously, each attribute processed in parallel. The shrimp perceives this composite as a unified experience. To humans, such information would be overwhelming. To them, it is effortless. Their neural networks evolved to process a richer photon signature without cognitive overload. This suggests that seeing is not just about receptors, it is about computational bandwidth. Even more fascinating is the link between perception and environment-driven energy efficiency. Sensory systems are metabolically expensive, so evolution optimizes them tightly. Animals detect only the information that improves survival odds. That is why bees see ultraviolet flowers broadcast UV nectar guides. Why snakes see infrared warm-blooded prey radiate heat. Why birds see magnetic fields migration demands orientation. Why deep-sea species detect faint bioluminescent sunlight never reaches their world. These sensory expansions are not luxuries. They are precise solutions to ecological constraints. Reality itself becomes partitioned into ecologically relevant slices, and each species perceives the slice evolution has carved out for it. Taken together, these principles redraw our understanding of perception entirely. Vision is not a window, it is a set of filters, not an objective truth but a survival strategy. Animals do not merely sense the world, they construct it from the signals evolution permits them to detect. The invisible world is therefore not a hidden layer waiting to be uncovered by humans. It is already in use, guiding migrations, shaping predator-prey interactions, orchestrating courtship rituals, and structuring ecosystems. Every creature lives inside a sensory universe evolved specifically for its needs, each one overlapping ours, yet profoundly different. And as we continue exploring these unseen dimensions, the familiar world begins to dissolve into a mosaic of spectral possibilities, each illuminated by eyes not our own. As we travel deeper into the invisible worlds animals inhabit, a broader pattern begins to emerge, one in which each sensory system is not an isolated adaptation, but part of a grand ecological network shaped by the physics of the environment. Light behaves differently in every habitat, scattering in forests, refracting underwater, shifting color temperature at dusk, dispersing unpredictably through clouds or fog. These optical conditions impose selective pressures that sculpt the evolution of sensory organs in astonishingly precise ways. In open grasslands, long wavelengths dominate, favoring mammals with dichromatic vision tuned to contrast rather than color. In dense forests, ultraviolet reflections break through narrow gaps in the canopy, guiding birds and insects to food sources. Vision becomes an ecosystem-specific solution, calibrated to a habitat's unique photonic signature. The brain must then interpret these signals in context. But neural processing is not uniform. Each species has evolved a sensory hierarchy optimized for its ecological goals. Predators prioritize motion detection and depth cues, amplifying neural circuits for stereopsis and rapid threat assessment. Pollinators emphasize spectral discrimination and pattern recognition, using neural algorithms to decode floral structures invisible to humans. Oceanic species, whose environment filters most wavelengths, rely on contrast sensitivity and bioluminescent pattern decoding. These processing systems do not simply add abilities, they transform perception into a multi-layered decoding mechanism. The brain becomes a living optical computer, compressing, filtering, amplifying, and interpreting photon data in real time, all while minimizing metabolic cost. But the invisible realm extends beyond photons. Many animals sense magnetic fields through quantum effects occurring inside specialized proteins. Cryptochrome molecules, found in the retinas of migratory birds, form radical pairs whose spin states are altered by Earth's magnetic field. These quantum spin interactions influence chemical reactions in ways that create faint visual signals, an overlay of magnetic contours across the bird's normal field of sight. This mechanism, known as the radical pair model, represents a rare example of quantum biology operating at macroscopic scales. Birds navigate continents using a sensory channel that merges quantum coherence with visual processing, effectively seeing the Earth's magnetic geometry. Humans have no access to this world. For birds, it is an omnipresent guide. Even more complex are animals that combine multiple invisible modalities into unified perceptual constructs. Sharks integrate electromagnetic gradients with chemical cues and low-frequency vibrations, forming a three-dimensional sensory map of their surroundings. Bats merge infrared thermal cues with millisecond-precise acoustic echoes, constructing spatial scenes in total darkness. Electric fish emit timed electrical pulses, detect distortions in these fields, and update an internal model of their environment with every pulse. Their brains fuse data from different physical domains, electrical conductivity, water turbulence, thermal differences, into a single coherent perception. This multimodal integration demonstrates that the invisible world is not made of separate channels. It is a continuous information space. Species tap into using whatever sensory architecture evolution has granted them. Some of the most sophisticated sensory logic emerges in animals that recognize the intent behind signals. Many species perceive subtle variations in polarization, phase, or wavelength, not merely as environmental data, but as purposeful communication. Cuttlefish, for instance, use polarization-sensitive skin cells to send messages only other polarization-capable animals can see. These patterns shift in milliseconds, encoding emotional states, intentions, or territorial claims. To humans, their skin appears simply iridescent. To other cuttlefish, it becomes a dynamic, language-like field of polarized symbols. This ability reveals an important scientific insight. Invisible perception is not only about extracting environmental information, it also becomes an encrypted communication system, allowing species to exchange data while remaining invisible to predators. At the deepest level, these adaptations hint at a profound truth about life on Earth. Every species experiences a different slice of reality, filtered through sensory systems shaped by evolution. Humans see only a narrow band of wavelengths. Bees see ultraviolet, birds see magnetic fields, mantis shrimps see polarization, snakes see heat, sharks see electricity. The true world, the physical world, is a vast, multidimensional tapestry of information. No single species perceives it fully. Instead, each life form samples the aspects most beneficial for its survival. Reality, therefore, is not a single objective picture, but a collection of overlapping perceptual universes. The invisible world is not hidden, it is simply inaccessible to the human eye. As we move deeper into the invisible perceptual worlds of animals, a striking pattern emerges. Nature does not merely receive light, it sculpts it. Many species possess biological structures that function almost like engineered optical devices, capable of manipulating photons with precision that rivals human-made technologies. Butterflies, for example, use photonic crystals nanostructures that selectively reflect certain wavelengths through interference patterns. Their wings aren't colored by pigment alone, but by meticulously arranged microscopic layers that trap, redirect, and amplify light. These structures operate on the scale of hundreds of nanometers, transforming incident photons into vivid iridescence. To animals with ultraviolet sensitivity or polarization vision, these patterns reveal complex, species-specific signals invisible to humans. Such designs are not passive. They are optical messages etched into biological architecture. Bird feathers exhibit similar sophistication. The blues and greens of many species are not pigment-based at all. They arise from coherent scattering within nanoscale keratin air matrices. These internal nanostructures are tuned to reflect specific wavelengths, creating color intensities and ultraviolet signatures that carry social and reproductive information. Even subtle modifications in layer thickness or spacing alter the feather's spectral output. Birds with ultraviolet vision experience these signals as radiant, high-contrast indicators of health, symmetry, and lineage. What appears to humans as a simple blue shimmer is, to them, a detailed optical fingerprint encoded in invisible frequencies. Their perception decodes these nanostructured messages with extraordinary accuracy. Marine organisms push optical manipulation even further. Many deep-sea creatures possess photophores, biological light organs capable of producing precisely controlled bioluminescence. These organs are not simple glowing tissues. They consist of specialized lenses, reflectors, filters, and shutters that shape light as effectively as engineered optical systems. Some fish generate focused beams, others produce diffuse glows that blend seamlessly into the ocean's ambient light, creating perfect camouflage known as counter-illumination. Cephalopods incorporate pigment sacs, reflectors, and birefringent platelets to produce dynamic displays that shift over milliseconds. Yet many of these patterns are visible only to animals capable of detecting specific wavelengths or polarization states. The deep sea, though dark to human eyes, becomes a luminous communication network. On land, certain insects achieve optical feats that stretch the limits of biology. The jewel beetle's exoskeleton generates circularly polarized reflections, a phenomenon extremely rare in nature. These reflections require precise alignment of chitin layers, functioning like biological wave plates. To animals sensitive to polarization, this creates a hidden spectral signature, marking the beetle as a member of its species. Mantis shrimps, uniquely equipped to detect circular polarization, exploit this channel for mating signals and threat displays. They perceive structural information that passes unnoticed by humans and most predators. Their world is enriched by optical dimensions that remain theoretical abstractions in human physics classrooms, yet are fully functional within the shrimp's natural environment. Meanwhile, many species have evolved neural mechanisms that push the boundaries of what biology can compute. Some animals operate at the edge of shot noise, the quantum limit of photon detection. Nocturnal predators like owls and cats maximize photon absorption through large pupils, reflective retinal layers, and rod-dominated retinas, allowing them to detect movement in near-complete darkness. But beyond capturing light, their brains must differentiate signal from noise, distinguishing meaningful patterns from random photon fluctuations. This requires neural circuits optimized for low-light temporal integration, enhancing faint motion signals without drowning them in statistical noise. In these species, vision becomes not only an optical feat, but a probabilistic computation performed moment by moment. And yet, when all these adaptations are viewed together, the most profound insight emerges. Invisible perception is not a supplemental sense. It is a primary interface between animals and their environments. For each species, the world is constructed from the information evolution has deemed most essential. Some animals inhabit ultraviolet landscapes, others navigate polarized skylines, still others communicate in bioluminescent pulses or thermal silhouettes. The human visual spectrum, though familiar, is merely one narrow rendering of a far broader physical reality. To live within the invisible world is to inhabit a universe layered with signals, patterns, and structures we cannot naturally sense. But for the creatures that evolved to see them, these dimensions are as real and immediate as color is to us. As we continue our descent into the invisible perceptual dimensions of animals, we arrive at a critical realization. Sensory evolution does not simply expand the boundaries of perception, it optimizes them. Each sensory system is shaped by selective pressures that refine the efficiency of information capture. In biological terms, perception is a form of energy management. Photoreceptors require metabolic power to maintain ionic gradients. Neural computation requires ATP to propagate signals. Protective pigments must be synthesized to shield tissues from radiation. Therefore, animals evolve sensory systems only to the degree that the ecological benefit outweighs the metabolic cost. This cost-benefit equilibrium explains why many mammals lost ultraviolet sensitivity, why deep-sea fish abandoned broad-spectrum color vision, and why insects retain lightweight but information-rich compound eyes. Perception is an evolutionary negotiation, not a luxury. The physical world itself imposes constraints that shape sensory evolution. The electromagnetic spectrum contains infinite wavelengths, yet only a narrow fraction carries useful ecological information for terrestrial life. Ultraviolet reveals floral patterns and feather signals. Visible light carries rich detail in most habitats. Infrared radiates from warm bodies. Polarization patterns encode sky geometry. But wavelengths beyond these bands, radio, gamma, X-ray, provide little actionable information to organisms. They either penetrate tissue without useful resolution or are too energetic for biological molecules to safely process. Thus, evolution selects wavelengths that balance biological safety, environmental reliability, and informational density. Animals do not evolve to see everything. They evolve to see the world as it matters to them. Neural architecture further refines the invisible world. The brain cannot afford to process every photon. It must filter aggressively, discarding noise while preserving essential structure. For example, dragonflies possess neural circuits that predict prey motion using correlative coding, allowing them to intercept targets with nearly perfect accuracy. Their brains compute trajectories not from raw visual data alone, but from predictive algorithms refined by millions of years of selection. Bees, meanwhile, reduce visual complexity by converting UV patterns into categorical codes, simplifying their navigation rather than overloading their small brains with unnecessary detail. Even large-brained animals like birds optimize their visual processing by compartmentalizing tasks: color interpretation in one region, magnetic field visualization in another, motion detection in yet another. Perception becomes a distributed system, a living network of specialized modules performing parallel computations. On the level of physical environment, the invisible world emerges from interactions between photons and matter. Surfaces reflect, absorb, scatter, or refract light in ways that encode precise biological information. The angle of scattering reveals texture. The spectrum of reflection reveals chemical composition. The pattern of polarization reveals surface orientation. The consistency of bioluminescence reveals physiological state. Animals evolved to decode these signals with extraordinary accuracy. To a bird, the ultraviolet reflectivity of a leaf indicates hydration levels. To a fish, polarized reflections on scales reveal stress or readiness to mate. To a snake, infrared emissions expose heartbeat rhythms and vascular distribution. These cues form a vast sensory ecology, an optical economy of signals continuously exchanged among organisms, each reading layers invisible to human perception. Remarkably, some species manipulate these signals intentionally. Cephalopods restructure their skin patterns to encode emotional states in light. Butterflies reflect polarized UV signals during mating rituals. Birds align their feathers to enhance or diminish ultraviolet contrast depending on dominance or threat. Even plants participate in this optical communication system. Flowers shift their UV reflectance based on age, health, or nectar availability, altering the messages they broadcast to pollinators. The invisible world is therefore not a static domain, it is a dynamic language spoken across species, each participant both broadcasting and receiving signals in wavelengths humans cannot witness. And beneath all of this sensory complexity lies a deeper evolutionary principle. Organisms do not perceive the world as it is, they perceive the world as it is useful to them. Reality, in biological terms, is not an objective external structure, but a customized interface built by evolution. Animals navigate ecosystems composed not only of physical objects but of spectral cues, electromagnetic gradients, thermal contours, and optical signals that shape their behavior. Humans live inside a narrow perceptual window, confident in its completeness only because we cannot naturally imagine what lies beyond it. Yet for countless species, the invisible world is not invisible at all. It is the fundamental architecture of their existence. As we move deeper into the unseen dimensions of animal perception, it becomes clear that sensory evolution is not merely a story of enhanced detail, it is a story of information efficiency. Every sensory system must balance three competing demands: the richness of environmental signals, the metabolic cost of detecting them, and the computational burden of interpreting them. In information theory, this balance resembles an optimization problem. Organisms must extract the maximum useful information with the minimum energy expenditure. Vision, in this framework, becomes an act of entropy reduction, converting chaotic streams of photons into ordered, meaningful patterns. While humans reduce visual entropy using color boundaries and edge detection, many animals reduce it through spectral filtering, polarization sensitivity, or neural compression algorithms more advanced than any artificial system we have built. Take polarization vision as an example. Humans perceive brightness and color, but we are blind to the orientation of light waves. Yet polarization carries high-efficiency information. It reveals the angle of the sun, the structure of the sky, the direction of water surfaces, and the presence of hidden objects underwater. For insects, decoding polarization dramatically reduces environmental uncertainty. A bee flying toward the horizon does not see a uniform blue expanse, but a structured dome of polarized vectors indicating direction and time of day. Dragonflies use polarization gradients to detect prey where brightness-based vision fails. In these species, the brain treats polarization as a low-entropy cue, an efficient, robust signal immune to many forms of noise. What appears invisible to humans becomes, for them, the clearest and most reliable information channel available. Thermal vision offers another example of evolutionary information filtering. Infrared radiation is emitted by all warm bodies, but the signal is inherently noisy. Heat dissipates, thermal patterns fluctuate, and environmental conditions distort gradients. Yet snakes interpret these fluctuations with astonishing precision. Their pit organs act like biological bolometers, detecting temperature differences of 0.003 degrees Celsius far beyond human capacity. But more importantly, their brains perform spatial smoothing algorithms, filtering thermal noise while preserving edges and boundaries. This transforms a chaotic field of infrared emissions into a coherent thermal map. Prey animals glow not merely with heat, but with recognizable shapes, trajectories, and even physiological rhythms. Thermal perception thus becomes a form of geometric extraction, pulling order out of randomness, turning invisible heat gradients into patterned reality. In the ocean, where light behaves unpredictably, animals rely heavily on temporal structure rather than spatial detail. Bioluminescent signals are not simply colors, they are time-coded messages. Some creatures emit flashes with precise pulse intervals, frequencies, or oscillation patterns. These temporal codes function like biological modulation schemes, similar to radio transmission in technology. Tiny shrimp communicate with burst patterns, fish signal warnings with rhythmic pulses, plankton emit rapid flashes that propagate alarm cascades through the water column. Many predators evolved photoreceptors tuned to detect these temporal patterns with microsecond accuracy. While humans see only brief flashes, marine animals decode complete messages, information transmitted not through wavelength but through time. Meanwhile, birds navigate using a sensory modality humans cannot fathom: the integration of photonic inputs with geomagnetic gradients. Their cryptochrome-based magnetoreception likely creates faint visual overlays, patterns humans cannot see, yet birds perceive as part of their natural visual landscape. But what makes this system remarkable is its error correction mechanism. Magnetoreception alone is noisy and unstable, influenced by solar storms and geographic anomalies. Birds compensate by combining magnetic cues with ultraviolet skyline gradients and polarized light maps. This multisensory integration reduces uncertainty, allowing navigation with astonishing accuracy over thousands of kilometers. Their perception is not sensory addition, it is sensory fusion, merging independent information channels into a single coherent world model. In each case, the invisible world reveals itself not as a hidden physical realm, but as a dimension disclosed through selective sensory tuning and sophisticated neural computation. Animals do not access more reality than humans. They access different slices of reality, those most aligned with their ecological roles and survival strategies. Their sensory systems do not indiscriminately collect data, they execute highly efficient extraction algorithms honed by evolution. And within these algorithms lies the profound lesson. Perception is not a mirror of the world, but a negotiation, a biological contract with physics, a selective translation of infinite signals into finite meaning. What we call invisible is simply what our particular contract excludes. As we continue our exploration of the invisible worlds perceived by animals, a new dimension of understanding begins to take shape, the architecture of sensory compression. No organism, no matter how advanced, can process the full torrent of environmental information flooding its receptors. Instead, evolution shapes sensory systems to extract only the most predictive features of the environment. This is known as efficient coding, a principle by which brains reduce redundant information and amplify rare, behaviorally meaningful signals. For humans, edges and contrasts are prioritized because they define object boundaries. But for insects, ultraviolet gradients offer more reliable information about food sources. For birds, polarization patterns provide unambiguous orientation cues. Each species selects the information channel with the highest long-term payoff, compressing reality into a perceptual format optimized for survival. In forest environments, for instance, light is filtered through countless layers of leaves, producing a spectral environment dominated by greens and scattered ultraviolet reflections. Many animals evolved photoreceptors tuned specifically to this filtered light. Butterflies see ultraviolet patterns on leaves, revealing water content. Birds detect faint UV glimmers, indicating the presence of insects. Small mammals rely on subtle changes in luminance to detect predators. This is not random. The forest is an optical maze, a medium where photons behave differently depending on angle, moisture, and canopy density. Animals living here interpret these distortions not as noise, but as encoded messages. The invisible world is woven into the forest's physics, and the creatures that live within it read these codes effortlessly. In open environments like savannas, the sensory priorities shift dramatically. Here, long wavelengths travel farther, atmospheric scattering is reduced, and spectral contrast becomes less relevant than motion detection. Many mammals evolved dichromatic vision 2-cone types instead of 3, not because they lost complexity, but because removing unnecessary spectral detail allows faster motion recognition. Their neural circuits are tuned to detect predators long before color becomes relevant. This streamlined perceptual model reduces computational load, conserving metabolic energy while enhancing survival. It is a reminder that sensory sophistication is not measured in the number of colors an organism sees, but in the fitness value of the information it extracts. In aquatic environments, the invisible world becomes even more finely sculpted. Water absorbs red light almost instantly, making longer wavelengths irrelevant for survival. Fish, living at depth, evolve photoreceptors tuned to narrow blue-green bands, maximizing photon capture under extreme scarcity. Deep-sea species specialize even further, evolving retinas that detect specific bioluminescent wavelengths produced by prey or mates. This creates a spectral matching system. Predators evolve photoreceptors tuned to the emission spectrum of their prey. Prey evolve bioluminescent signatures that blend into the optical background. The environment becomes an arms race of visibility and invisibility, each species shaping the sensory landscape for all others. Human eyes fail here, not because the environment is dark, but because our sensory contract with physics was never designed for these wavelengths. Even more extraordinary are environments where animals generate their own optical signals to manipulate perception. Cuttlefish, squids, and other cephalopods produce dynamic skin patterns that exploit the sensory biases of observers. Their chromatophores create broad-spectrum color changes, while iridophores manipulate polarized light in ways visible only to polarization-sensitive species. When a cuttlefish signals aggression or courtship, it is broadcasting across multiple optical channels simultaneously: color, contrast, polarization, and temporal rhythm. Humans see only shifting colors. Other cuttlefish see a layered communique, more complex than any spoken language. Their invisible signals represent not just perception, but intent encoded through light. All of these examples lead to a profound scientific insight. Perception is not a reflection of the world, it is an intelligent sampling of it. Evolution shapes each species to detect exactly those features that reduce uncertainty in its environment. To a bee, ultraviolet petals are landmarks. To a bird, magnetic contours are maps. To a fish, polarization gradients are silhouettes. To a snake, thermal fields are shapes. To a mantis shrimp, circular polarization is identity itself. Thus, every creature lives inside a reality optimized for its needs, a sensory universe carved from the full complexity of physics, but distilled into a form evolution has refined for millions of years. The invisible world is not hidden. It is simply unreadable to us, because our perceptual system was tuned to a different set of priorities. As we move deeper into the layered sensory realities of animals, an even more profound concept begins to emerge. Each species occupies its own perceptual universe, its own Umwelt. This term, coined by biologist Jakob von Uexküll, describes the subjective slice of reality available to an organism. Not the objective world, but the world as filtered through the organism's sensory and neural machinery. Humans live within a three-cone color system, limited to 400-700 nanometer wavelengths. Bees inhabit a trichromatic system that replaces red with ultraviolet. Birds inhabit a tetrachromatic world expanded into the UV spectrum. Mantis shrimps inhabit a 16-receptor world where polarization, wavelength, and temporal modulation merge into multidimensional perception. Each organism's reality is structurally different, not by hallucination, but by the selective sensitivity of its receptors. This means that the physical world contains far more structure than any one species perceives. Surfaces reflect ultraviolet signatures humans cannot detect. Water polarizes light in patterns invisible to land mammals. Heat radiates in gradients that snakes perceive as contours. Electromagnetic fields ripple with biological signals. Sharks decode effortlessly. The universe is overflowing with information, but each species samples only a subset determined by its evolutionary history. The human perceptual world is therefore not a full rendering but a sensory approximation, optimized for activities like recognizing faces, assessing social cues, and navigating terrestrial landscapes. Our brains discard enormous amounts of data because processing it would be energetically costly and evolutionarily unnecessary. Animals that evolved in more informationally dense environments developed perceptual tools to match that complexity. In the open ocean, where contrast and color disappear, cephalopods have skin embedded with opsin proteins, allowing them to detect light directly through their bodies. Some species respond to shadows, brightness gradients, or polarized reflections without relying on their eyes at all, creating a distributed sensing system more akin to a living photonic network. This allows them to blend seamlessly into backgrounds, responding to subtle changes in environmental illumination faster than a centralized brain could process. Their perception is not confined to a single focal organ. It is diffused across the entire body, turning skin into a sensory membrane attuned to invisible wavelengths and orientations of light. Meanwhile, birds refine their multispectral world through an almost architectural mapping of sensory data. Their brains contain regions dedicated to integrating visual, magnetic, and gravitational cues into a unified spatial model. They read ultraviolet reflections in feathers, polarization gradients in the sky, and magnetic field contours that run from pole to pole. These cues converge within neural structures like the avian hippocampus, forming detailed cognitive maps that allow migration with astonishing precision. A human pilot relies on instruments. A bird relies on the geometry of invisible forces. Their perceptual system does not just see a world, it constructs one from overlapping sensory layers humans cannot access. Insects, by contrast, embody a different kind of sensory logic: high-speed, high-efficiency feature extraction. Their compound eyes detect rapid changes in luminance and motion, allowing them to process information at temporal frequencies far exceeding human capability. A fly perceives movement in the form of vector fields, a dynamic computation of direction and velocity extracted from the optical flow across thousands of ommatidia. Add ultraviolet sensitivity and polarized sky cues, and the insect's world becomes an intricate choreography of luminous vectors, spectral beacons, and rapid temporal transitions. What seems chaotic to humans becomes, for the insect, a navigational grid structured around invisible light. These perceptual universes intertwine within ecosystems. Flowers evolved ultraviolet patterns because bees see ultraviolet. Birds evolved plumage with UV reflective patches because potential mates perceive them. Marine organisms evolved bioluminescent wavelengths matched to the photoreceptors of their predators or mates. Evolution creates feedback loops in which sensory systems and environmental signals co-evolve. The invisible world is therefore not static. It is sculpted, generation after generation, by selective pressures acting simultaneously on emitters and receivers. Nature becomes a vast communication network where each species transmits and receives information across channels that rarely overlap with human experience. And in this intricate architectural tapestry of perception, one truth becomes unmistakable. The human sensory world is only one of countless possible renderings of physical reality. Every animal perceives a version that is equally valid, equally detailed, equally real to its own needs. The invisible world is not above or beyond human capability. It is simply other, a parallel dimension shaped by biology rather than imagination. And as we continue traveling through these unseen realms, we begin to sense how narrow our own perceptual window truly is, and how rich the universe must appear to those who see through different eyes. As our understanding of animal perception deepens, we find ourselves confronting a fundamental truth. Sensory systems are not merely tools for detecting stimuli, they are predictive engines. Every organism navigates its world not by passively observing it, but by anticipating patterns, estimating probabilities, and refining internal models of the environment. In neuroscience, this is known as predictive coding, the notion that the brain continuously generates hypotheses and updates them with incoming sensory information. Humans rely on predictive coding to stabilize visual scenes and make sense of ambiguous shapes. But many animals, especially those inhabiting chaotic or low-light environments, take this principle much further. Their sensory systems evolve to reduce uncertainty, not by collecting more data, but by refining their ability to predict what that data should be. Consider nocturnal predators like owls. They perceive far less visual information than a human does in daylight, yet their internal model of the world is astonishingly accurate. Their auditory and visual maps align with perfect geometric precision. Each faint photon entering the eye is weighted against a predicted spatial model. Owls do not simply see prey in darkness, they infer its presence from a convergence of thermal cues, sound vectors, and minuscule movements, all processed through a neural network tuned to the physics of low-light environments. Their perception is thus an interplay of weak sensory signals and strong predictive frameworks, demonstrating that the invisible world is often reconstructed, not revealed. Marine animals face a different challenge. Underwater, signals degrade quickly, scattering light and sound into noisy fragments. Yet many species thrive in these conditions by relying on multimodal redundancy, the use of multiple sensory pathways to confirm or correct incoming information. A fish navigating near a reef may combine low-resolution visual gradients with water displacement cues detected through its lateral line system. Bioluminescent flashes provide temporal structure. Polarized light patterns indicate surface orientation. Chemical gradients reveal the presence of predators or food. No single cue suffices, but together they create a layered perceptual map far richer than any one modality could achieve. The invisible world emerges from synthesis, each sensory fragment contributing to a unified understanding of space. Insects elevate this integrative strategy to its most extreme form. Their brains are small yet incredibly efficient, capable of performing complex visual computations with minimal neural resources. A dragonfly, for instance, must detect a moving target among thousands of distracting visual elements. To accomplish this, its neurons filter out irrelevant information, amplifying only motion vectors consistent with prey behavior. This is computational parsimony, a strategy where neural circuits evolve to solve specific problems with the least possible complexity. Insects do not perceive every detail of their environment. They perceive exactly what matters. Their invisible world is carved by minimalism, the product of millions of years of optimizing signal-to-noise ratio. Some animals go beyond prediction and integration by manipulating light itself as a form of adaptive behavior. Cuttlefish alter their skin patterns based on the polarization sensitivity of observers. Birds tilt their feathers to enhance or diminish UV reflectance depending on social context. Even plants participate by adjusting their ultraviolet signatures to attract or deter pollinators. These interactions reveal a biological marketplace of information, an ecosystem where perception and signaling co-evolve continuously. The invisible world becomes dynamic, shaped by feedback loops in which both observers and emitters influence one another's evolution. At the deepest level, these perceptual strategies reveal a unifying principle. Reality, for any organism, is a negotiation between physics and biology. Light behaves according to fundamental laws of scattering, absorption, and reflection. Neural systems behave according to evolutionary pressures of survival and reproduction. Where these constraints meet, perception emerges as a compromise, an optimized interface between organism and environment. Humans inhabit a narrow perceptual channel shaped by our own evolutionary history. Other species inhabit channels that overlap or diverge from ours in ways we can scarcely imagine. The invisible world is not a single hidden layer, but a spectrum of realities, each crafted by a different set of biological priorities. And as we explore these dimensions, we come to understand that our own sensory world is but one of countless possible renderings of the universe. As we venture further into the invisible realms sculpted by animal perception, we begin to recognize that each species occupies not just a sensory niche, but a mathematical landscape of signals, a perceptual topology shaped by its evolutionary history. This landscape is not uniform. It bends and stretches according to the dimensions that matter most to the organism. For a snake, the thermal dimension is steep and richly detailed. For a bee, ultraviolet space is bright and sharply partitioned. For a bird, the geomagnetic axis threads through vision as a faint but ever-present gradient. Every species perceives a different geometry of the same world, each one building a sensory coordinate system that overlays physics with biology. The invisible world is not simply unseen, it is unmapped by human experience, because our sensory system does not include the axes required to perceive it. Inside the brain, these sensory landscapes are further transformed by predictive algorithms that compress, interpret, and extrapolate signals into stable internal representations. Humans rely heavily on context to fill in visual gaps, an evolutionary shortcut to reduce computational load. But many animals evolve predictive systems entirely unlike ours. Migratory birds maintain long-distance navigation models that integrate star patterns, magnetic vectors, and atmospheric polarization. Sharks maintain electric field maps of the seafloor built from faint electromagnetic fluctuations. Even small mammals maintain thermal flow models of their burrows, predicting how temperature gradients shift over time. In each case, the brain is not passively observing, it is actively constructing a forecast of reality. The invisible world becomes a tapestry woven equally from sensory input and internal expectation. Biophotonic interactions add another layer to this complexity. Many animals possess tissues that manipulate incoming light at the nanoscale, effectively pre-processing environmental signals before they reach the retina. The layered guanine crystals in fish scales act as spectral filters. The chitin structures in beetle shells polarize light. The microscopic ridges on butterfly wings generate directional scattering. These surfaces function like biological optical devices, waveguides, polarizers, diffusers, interferometers, each engineered by natural selection to modify how the wearer is perceived. To predators with polarization vision, a beetle's shell may appear striped or glowing. To a human, it is merely glossy. The invisible world is therefore not just perceived, it is performed through biological structures tuned to specific wavelengths. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of invisible perception arises in animals that blend multiple sensing modalities into a single, fused perceptual experience. Electric fish integrate electrical conductivity maps with pressure waves detected by their lateral line. Bats overlay echolocation with thermal gradients to create three-dimensional models of space. Predatory birds merge ultraviolet markings, polarization patterns, and minute motion cues into a unified visual gestalt. These multimodal integrations reveal that perception is not divided by sense. It is synthesized into a coherent world model unique to each species. Humans experience vision, hearing, and touch as separate streams. Many animals do not. For them, the invisible world is a seamless continuum of signals. The environment itself also shapes which parts of the invisible spectrum become evolutionarily valuable. In the deep sea, red light disappears almost immediately, collapsing the visible spectrum into narrow blue bands. This forces animals to rely on bioluminescence for communication and camouflage. In deserts, heat dominates. Thermal gradients become the most information-rich signals for survival. In dense forests, ultraviolet reflections provide the most reliable spatial references. Thus, the invisible world shifts from one habitat to another, not because physics changes, but because the informational value of each wavelength is different. Animals evolve to read the signals that offer the highest payoff in their environment. Ultimately, all these systems point to a profound conclusion. The world each organism sees is not the world as it is, but the world as evolution has filtered and encoded it. Humans navigate a narrow sensory corridor optimized for social interaction and daylight activity. Other species follow corridors shaped by polarization, magnetism, heat, bioluminescence, or electric fields. Each corridor reveals a different universe. Each universe is complete, coherent, and deeply real to the creature that perceives it. The invisible world is not a mythic realm hidden behind the visible. It is an ever-present dimension woven into the fabric of life, accessible only through the sensory architecture tuned to receive it. As we delve deeper into the invisible perceptual architectures of animals, one concept becomes increasingly unavoidable. Every sensory system operates within a boundary defined by resolution, noise, and efficiency. Vision is constrained by photon availability, hearing by mechanical vibration limits, thermal sensing by environmental entropy, magnetoreception by quantum decoherence. These physical limits form the outer perimeter of what evolution can achieve. Yet within these boundaries, life finds astonishingly diverse ways to extract meaning from the world. The invisible dimensions animals navigate are therefore shaped not only by the senses they possess, but by the physics that govern those senses. For example, in extremely low-light environments, such as deep forests at dusk or oceanic twilight zones, photon-shot noise becomes a dominant constraint. The human eye struggles here because our photoreceptors require a minimum number of photons within a certain time frame to form a clear image. But nocturnal animals have retinas tuned to operate at the edge of quantum limits. Their rod cells are sensitive enough to detect individual photons, and their neural circuitry integrates these faint signals across time, smoothing out randomness while preserving structure. In such species, perception becomes a negotiation with quantum uncertainty. Each moment is a probabilistic reconstruction of the environment. The invisible world they perceive is not static, but fluctuates with the flow of photons themselves. In habitats dominated by thermal variation, the constraints shift toward heat diffusion and emissivity. Snakes, bats, and some beetles have evolved pit organs capable of resolving temperature differences far below what human skin or eyes can detect. But the real miracle lies in the neural processing behind this sensitivity. These animals perform spatial averaging, edge enhancement, and temporal smoothing on thermal signals, essentially running thermal vision through neural algorithms similar to those used in advanced image processing technologies. The result is perception that appears continuous and stable, even though the underlying data is noisy, diffuse, and constantly changing. What humans would interpret as ambiguous warmth becomes, for them, a detailed map of living bodies. In aquatic environments, where both sound and light behave unpredictably, animals transcend the limits of a single modality by integrating multiple sensory channels. Dolphins use echolocation to generate high-resolution acoustic images, but they also combine these with visual silhouettes, water pressure variations, and even magnetic cues. Fish blend polarization patterns on the water's surface with vibrations detected by the lateral line. These integrations are not additive, they are multiplicative, where each modality enhances the precision of the others. In a sense, these animals perceive an expanded sensory dimension in which the boundaries between sound, light, and touch blur into a single perceptual fabric. The invisible world for them is not hidden, it is synesthetic. Even terrestrial insects, with tiny nervous systems, push perceptual integration to extraordinary levels. The compound eye of a dragonfly, for instance, processes motion vectors with microsecond precision, while its wind-sensitive hairs detect the slightest turbulence in the air. These two sensory inputs fuse seamlessly, allowing the dragonfly to anticipate prey movements rather than merely follow them. Its world is composed of directional flows rather than static shapes, a dynamic, vector-based reality invisible to human senses. This is not seeing as we know it. It is perceiving the world as a field of forces, each one carrying information. What becomes evident from these examples is that perception evolves not only to detect the world, but to predict and stabilize it. Animals rarely perceive raw signals. They perceive patterns, correlations, and tendencies, compressed representations that allow them to act quickly and efficiently. The invisible world is thus not only an ecological construct but a cognitive one. It emerges from the interaction between external physics and internal neural expectations. For humans, the world feels consistent because our brains impose consistency. For many animals, the world feels richer because their brains accept dimensions we cannot consciously process. In the end, these perceptual systems illuminate a hidden reality. Every organism interacts with the same physical universe, but each one extracts different truths from it. Humans walk through a world dominated by colors and shapes. Bees navigate by ultraviolet patterns, sharks read electric whispers, birds follow magnetic rivers flowing through the sky. Snakes trace heat maps that shimmer with life. Each sensory world is complete in its own right, yet none captures the entirety of the physical world. The invisible realms animals inhabit are therefore not illusions. They are parallel interpretations of reality, running alongside ours in perpetual silence. As we continue exploring the invisible sensory realms that other animals inhabit, a profound realization emerges. Perception is not anchored in a single modality. It is an evolving negotiation between brain, body, and environment. Each species constructs a dynamic model of the world by sampling signals across the sensory landscape available to it. But these landscapes differ dramatically between species, not simply in what signals they detect, but in how they weight, combine, and interpret those signals. The invisible world is thus not defined by the absence of light, sound, or heat. It is defined by the presence of information humans are not built to decode. For migratory birds, one of the most striking invisible dimensions is the Earth's magnetic field. Within the retina, cryptochrome molecules undergo quantum spin reactions that are subtly influenced by magnetic inclination. This means that birds literally see orientation as part of their visual scene, likely appearing as faint dark light gradients overlaying the sky. But their brains do not treat magnetism as a standalone sense. Instead, magnetoreception is woven into a multi-layered navigation system that also incorporates polarized skylight, the sun's azimuth, ultraviolet cues, and even olfactory markers. Their perception is an integrated map, a global coordinate system continuously updated with every wing beat. As they migrate across continents, the invisible magnetic world is their constant companion, guiding their flight with precision humans cannot imagine. In marine environments, animals navigate through an entirely different invisible architecture: electric fields. Sharks, rays, and electric fish possess electroreceptors finely tuned to detect the faint electric currents generated by muscle contractions in living organisms. But these signals are not isolated, they merge with hydrodynamic information captured by the lateral line system, forming a fluid-based perception of space. A shark swimming through murky water perceives the world as gradients of voltage, water pressure, and movement, three invisible layers that overlap to form a cohesive sensory map. Vision becomes almost irrelevant. The invisible world, for these animals, is not an abstraction, it is the primary reality. Meanwhile, cephalopods have evolved an entirely different strategy, using light not only as a perceptual input, but as a behavioral output. Their skin contains cells capable of detecting light, directly independent of the eyes, while also producing rapid structural color changes through chromatophores, iridophores, and leucophores. This feedback loop, skin sensing light and simultaneously altering its own optical signal, allows cephalopods to blend into complex environments with astonishing speed. Their camouflage is not static pattern matching, it is dynamic sensory computation performed across the entire body. The invisible world for them is both mirror and message, a system where perception and expression become indistinguishable. Some mammals access invisible dimensions through their whiskers, highly sensitive mechanoreceptors that detect airflow, microvibrations, and subtle changes in spatial geometry. Rats, seals, and cats use whisker arrays as if they were tactile antennae, mapping the environment in near darkness with remarkable accuracy. These sensory inputs are processed through specialized neural circuits in the somatosensory cortex, constructing detailed models of space without the need for visual light. This tactile dimension becomes a substitute for vision, revealing a parallel world built from turbulence, vibration, and pressure, the hidden architecture of air and water movement. Across all these species, one pattern repeats. Invisibility is not a lack of perception, it is a shift in what is considered meaningful. Animals do not perceive the world uniformly. They perceive the world in a way that maximizes functional information. Some senses emphasize continuity, like thermal gradients, while others emphasize discontinuity, like polarized light. Some extract meaning from timing, echolocation, others from amplitude, electric fields, and others from wavelength, ultraviolet signals. These strategies demonstrate that the invisible world is not a single realm, but a spectrum of perceptual realities shaped by evolutionary need. Humans occupy just one narrow passage through this vast perceptual landscape. And perhaps the most humbling insight is this: the world as humans perceive it is not the world itself, but a projection, an optimized, compressed simulation shaped by evolution. To animals with different sensory architectures, reality unfolds with entirely different textures, shapes, and signals. For them, the invisible is obvious. For us, it remains hidden behind the biological limits of our sensory contract with nature. Yet, by studying these creatures, we glimpse the truth. The universe is far larger, richer, and more layered than human eyes can ever reveal. As we reach the end of this journey through the invisible worlds animals inhabit, a deeper truth begins to crystallize, one that stretches far beyond biology. Every species on Earth lives inside a perceptual bubble, shaped by the physical laws of its environment, the constraints of its neural architecture, and the demands of its evolutionary past. What one organism calls reality is simply the slice of the world it has evolved to detect. For humans, it is a spectrum of light between 400 and 700 nanometers, a modest range of sound frequencies, a limited thermal window, and a reliance on pattern recognition. But for countless other species, reality spreads into dimensions we cannot sense: ultraviolet landscapes, magnetic rivers flowing across the sky, thermal continents glowing with life, and electrical fields whispering through the dark. The invisible world is not hidden from us. We are simply not built to perceive it. Yet the most profound revelation is not that humans see less, it is that no species sees everything. Nature does not grant any organism full access to the universe. Instead, each is given only what it needs, no more and no less. A bee sees ultraviolet because flowers speak in ultraviolet. A shark perceives electricity because prey emits it. A bird senses magnetic fields because it must cross continents. Every sensory world is purposeful. Every perceptual limitation is efficient. The universe, therefore, is not experienced directly, but translated, filtered through biological systems that prioritize survival over completeness. The invisible world is vast, but every creature's window onto it is narrow. As we reflect on this, it becomes clear that our own human perception, so familiar, so seemingly complete, is just one interpretation among many. Our eyes reduce a complex electromagnetic spectrum into colors we can name. Our ears compress vibrating air into a sequence of sounds we can understand. Our brains draw boundaries, fill in gaps, smooth chaos into order. Without these simplifications, consciousness would collapse under the weight of unfiltered information. The very stability of the human world depends on the neurological decision to ignore more than it sees. What we call clarity is, in truth, a negotiated illusion, one evolution crafted to allow us to survive, socialize, navigate, and dream. Meanwhile, other creatures navigate universes layered on top of ours. To a bird, the sky is not blue, it is a compass of ultraviolet vectors and magnetic structures. To a snake, Darkness is luminous with thermal silhouettes. To a fish, murky water sparks with polarized reflections and electric gradients. To a moth, moonlight forms an exquisite celestial map, and to a mantis shrimp, the world is a kaleidoscope of wavelengths and polarizations we have no names for. These realities coexist with ours, but remain forever inaccessible without technology or imagination. The invisible world, therefore, is not somewhere else. It is right here, woven into every leaf, every ripple, every particle of light. And so, as this final chapter closes, we are left with a quiet but extraordinary realization. Our world is not limited, our perception is. The universe is richer than we can ever fully comprehend. It contains textures of light, currents of energy, and networks of signals that play out continuously around us, unseen yet profoundly real. Animals do not merely survive within these hidden dimensions, they thrive in them. Their senses reveal a cosmos far more intricate than the narrow band humans inhabit. Perhaps the deepest lesson is this: to understand the invisible world is not to expand our eyesight, it is to expand our imagination. Because only by imagining what other creatures see can we begin to grasp the true size of reality.